The problem: since 2019, Brazil has witnessed a systematic assault on fundamental institutions and democratic norms, accompanied by deliberate narrowing of the civic space, all the little blob assets in civil society. Since 2019, gee, what happened in 2019? January 2019 is when Bolsonaro took office. The former president, Bolsonaro, orchestrated relentless disinformation campaigns. So this is the World Justice Project. While Biden is president, getting millions of dollars from USAID, outright saying that Bolsonaro is the enemy, a threat to democracy. And there's an upcoming election. They launched this Protect Democracy 2022 elections, because that was when the presidential election in Brazil was, 2022. Orchestrate a comprehensive strategy, and look at what they did here. So here's what the World Justice Project, USAID, did. Dialogue with key stakeholders, such as judiciary officials and top-ranked legislators, yielded commitments. The creation of a task force in partnership with the DA office of Sao Paulo, the biggest city in Brazil. So USAID, through the World Justice Project, had a fucking task force partnership with the Brazil head prosecutor who was going around arresting all these Bolsonaro supporters. Diplomatic engagements and trustworthy information, meaning not allowing untrustworthy information, meaning censoring anything Trump says, anything Bolsonaro says, anything Marine Le Pen says, anything George Simeon or Kailan Georgescu in Romania says. Do you see how they changed it up? Hey, whatever happened to free speech and freedom of the press? Oh, no. We've changed our free speech category to say, yeah, free speech, but the second side of that is make sure you have a censorship capacity. Do you see how nasty that is? And by the way, this is the World Justice Project. USAID's arm to influence courts, judges, and prosecutors. What the flying fuck are they doing giving out awards to groups that have shown a demonstrated impact in getting judges and prosecutors to go after untrustworthy information? You're not allowed to do that in the United States. We have a First Amendment. It will prioritize building public trust in electronic voting machines. USAID spending your tax dollars, your income tax, were spent on paying USAID to get Brazilians to stop questioning electronic voting machines. This is who USAID gave the prize to. This 200 civil society group coalition in Brazil got a cash prize from USAID's Rule of Law program to map disinformation in Brazil and to protect the fucking CIA's power structures in Brazil. In partnership with Medan got $5.7 million from the National Science Foundation to do censorship work. All right, so the reason I played the Hive's I Told You So, hate to say I told you so, as the intro for this, is because something very funny happened this week. You know, I broke this whole story open about U.S. government interference in the election in Brazil to oust Bolsonaro and install Lula. And I met with folks from a Brazil delegation this week in Miami. The day after our meeting, Barroso, Justice Barroso, the head of the Brazil Supreme Court, this is the boss, you might say, of Alejandra de Moraes. See, the Brazilian Supreme Court the Supreme Court is called the STF, and there's a subsection of the Supreme Court called the TSE. That's the censorship court. That's Moraes at the TSE. But he's a member of the Supreme Court. You have to be on the STF to be a part of this smaller group, the TSE. So everyone knows this Voldemort judge, Moraes, if you remember. This is the face that everyone knows from when he shut down Twitter and seized Starlink's assets, as the Biden administration did nothing. But that is just a small subsection of the Supreme Court. The real head of the Supreme Court is this guy, Barroso. This guy. I'm surprised the Brazilians did not pay special attention to this. I actually played Barroso at the Wilson Center on the Patrick Bet-David podcast, and I went through Bajozo's connections to the U.S. government and U.S. government-funded NGOs. But the day after I met with the Brazilians this week in Miami, talking all about the USAID, State Department, USAID, DOD, CIA, and NGOplex descending like vultures on Brazil, the head of their corrupt Supreme Court said this.
E mais recentemente tivemos desses.
And more recently, we had decisive support from the United States
apoio dos Estados Unidos à institucionalidade
for the Brazilian institutionality and democracy in moments of shock. So again, it's all about the institutions. Notice how everyone tonight has been using the same language. The institutions, the institutions. That means blob asset, a blob control center, institutions in the judiciary, institutions in the business community, institutions in the media. You and I are not institutions, even if we do the exact same thing, because institution means under blob control. That's why they're venerated as institutions.
E a democracia brasileira em momentos de sobressalto. Eu mesmo, como
myself, as president of the highest electoral court, I was with an American chargé d'affaires.
presidente do Tribunal Superior Eleitoral, estive como encarregado de negócios americanos. Tive muitas vezes.
I had many times, but in 3 times I asked for U.S. declarations of support for Brazilian democracy. So the top judge is back-channeling with the Biden State Department to secure U.S. commitment to ban Bolsonaro supporters from social media, to do their digital resilience censorship crap, to go after WhatsApp and Telegram, and to support their rule of law efforts to lock up all the Bolsonaro supporters, as they're locking up Bolsonaro himself.
Mas em 3 vezes eu pedi declarações dos Estados Unidos de apoio à democracia brasileira, uma delas do próprio
one of them from the State Department itself. And I think it somehow played a role. So the whole time I was like, yeah, there's a formal program at USAID called the CEPS program. I talked about it twice on Joe Rogan, talked about it twice on Tucker Carlson. I said the CEPS Rule of Law program was literally a formal program at USAID to control the courts in Brazil. And is run jointly by the State Department, USAID, and both political branches of the National Endowment for Democracy, but particularly NDI, the DNC branch. 1 year later, the head of the Supreme Court's like, yeah, in Brazil, says, yeah, I was working with them the whole time. It's true. And it was a good thing. From conspiracy theory to good thing in one news cycle.
Departamento de Estado, e acho que isso teve algum papel porque os militares brasileiros não.
Because the Brazilian militaries don't like to be upset with the U.S. Yes, Brazil has the number 2 size military in the entire Western Hemisphere. They're very dependent on the U.S. Something I believe should be leveraged by the State Department and Pete Hegseth's Defense Department.
Não gosto de se indispor com os Estados Unidos porque aqui
because here in the U.S. is where they get their courses and equipment. Why are we continuing our military participation with the corrupt Lula government, who has arrested and banned their political opposition? Open question, isn't it?
Tem os seus cursos e os seus equipamentos. E mais.
So how funny is that? And then Lloyd Austin, the head of the U.S. military, comes down and tells the military to side with Lula. So corrupt. But on that note, Spiral sent me some great stuff from the World Justice Project, which we covered like 4 streams ago. The spin out of the American Bar Association. This is worldjusticeproject.org. Safeguarding integrity and rule of law in Brazil's 2022 election. So this is paid for by us. World Justice Project, which we went over again in the stream about a month ago, is funded by USAID. They get millions of dollars from USAID. This is ahead of the election in 2022. Since 2019, I actually think I highlighted this. Hold on a second. The problem. Since 2019, Brazil has witnessed a systematic assault on fundamental institutions and democratic norms, accompanied by deliberate narrowing of the civic space, all the little blob assets in civil society, and suppression of social participation. Citation, please. I love how they never, it's all asked and answered. This is quite a charge. Since 2019, gee, what happened in 2019? January 2019 is when Bolsonaro took office. The former president, Bolsonaro, orchestrated relentless disinformation campaigns. So this is the World Justice Project. While Biden is president, getting millions of dollars from USAID, outright saying that Bolsonaro is the enemy, a threat to democracy, and there's an upcoming election. Do you see what they're saying between the lines? Notice how they say since 2019. They didn't say start out with since Bolsonaro took office. They just name the start date is the moment Bolsonaro took office. And then they say he's orchestrated relentless disinformation campaigns, which gives cover with the World Justice Project with 4 Supreme Court justices on its advisory board. U.S. Supreme Court justices, former U.S. Supreme Court justices, and like the CEO of Shell and all these like oil companies, and they're giving cover to Brazil's censorship court to censor disinformation, threatening to delegitimize election results, just like how DHS worked with EIP to censor anything that might delegitimize a red mirage, blue shift, Joe Biden come from behind victory 5 months before the 2020 election. This multifaceted assault on democracy is imperiling the very foundation of Brazil's rule of law. The approach, the Protect Democracy 2022 Elections Initiative, orchestrated a comprehensive strategy to safeguard Brazil's democratic process against the Bolsonaro administration. This is a top-down admission from USAID that they wanted Bolsonaro out, that Bolsonaro was a threat to democracy, and we're going to do everything we can to lean on the judiciary, the rule of law institutions in Brazil, to get Bolsonaro out, because Bolsonaro has done a systematic assault on fundamental rights, institutions, and democratic norms. He's orchestrating relentless disinformation campaigns. So we're just going to impartially administer their election, lean on their judges. By the way, Barroso, who you saw here, and I played the Wilson Center clip from there, but this is also worth noting that Barroso also happens to be at a little place called Harvard. He's got a chair at Harvard. He says he's a fellow at Harvard. He's literally working with Harvard as we're doing this. The same way Harvard played the role in toppling Russia in the 1990s, and Harvard acted as the CIA intermediary with the civil society institutions that the CIA and State Department want to control in Russia. Harvard is doing that in Brazil today. It's in his Twitter bio, Barroso's.
It's a genuine joy welcoming back one of our longstanding friends here at the Carr Center. The most important thing to say about him is that he is a senior fellow.
Long-standing friends here. During this talk, the head of Brazil's Supreme Court is going to go after populism and how populism negatively impacts democratic bodies such as the courts. He will discuss examples of court systems that could not resist the rise of populism, leading to their capture. So those times when the courts were successful in withstanding populism. That is 5 fucking times they said the word populism in a single fucking sentence. None of these people have thought of this as an original idea. They are literally just the fucking large intestine of the blob, just digesting blob propaganda talking points, because populism is a threat to democracy is the pre-prepared predicate to unleash banning political parties, to unleash censorship, government censorship of speech. Do you understand? It's blob versus populism. Every time. That's what the whole power dynamic dissolves into. Not left, right, conservative, Democrat, communist, fascist. No, it's blob versus populism. If you read their white papers or listen to them talk to themselves, that's what they say every time. Harvard just opens the mouth of the head of the Supreme Court in Brazil and just dumps blob, populism is bad, populism bad. Oh. Okay, and once again, this is just like the Ned in Poland. Stamp out populism. Dismantle the government that you just won the election from. Ensure that populism does not return. Populism was represented by the PIS party, who was in power just before this prior election. And how to do that? By using the rule of law. There are a number of cases that should be tried immediately. Go after arrest judges. Arrest people for allowing mail-in voting. These are illustrative cases, but maybe just be the tip of the iceberg. Naturally, the leader of the party should be held responsible. But legally proving allegations will be difficult. We can't fucking think of anything, but find some way to arrest him. To stamp out populism and ensure that populism does not rise again like it just did because the people voted for it. Take it away from the voters to be able to vote for him. It's the same thing. How to resist the rise of populism and use the courts to withstand what the fucking people vote for. So back to the World Justice Project. So they run this operation to try to politically kill Bolsonaro using the courts, rule of law. They launched this Protect Democracy 2022 elections, because that was when the presidential election in Brazil was, 2022. Orchestrate a comprehensive strategy, and look at what they did here. So here's what the World Justice Project, USAID, did. And the American Bar Association, funded by USAID. Dialogue with key stakeholders, such as judiciary officials and top-ranked legislators, yielded commitments to uphold democratic norms. And their norms are like, you have to censor disinformation. These relentless disinformation campaigns. Now, the World Justice Project is claiming that their conversations with judges and legislators in Brazil yielded commitments from the judges and legislators in Brazil, like the norm against allowing the spread of disinformation. Internationally, diplomatic initiatives sought support from global allies, bolstering the credibility of the electoral process. As election day drew near, real-time coordination among civil society organizations, culminating in the civic vigil, hosted at the Brazil Bar Association. So the American Bar Association, funded by USAID, and the ABA's kissing cousin spin-out, World Justice Project, worked directly with the Brazil Lawyers Association. This space provided a unique and visible manifestation of grassroots solidarity. It provided a visible manifestation of grassroots solidarity. It's sponsored by the U.S. fucking government. There's nothing farther from grassroots than a direct government operation funded and organized by the government. But it gave a visible manifestation because the people in Brazil didn't fucking know that. The impact. The project successfully anticipated threats to the election. The initiative greatly increased civil society capacity of mobilization, uniting groups that historically have not supported each other. This resulted in the biggest event in defense of democracy in recent Brazilian history, with thousands of people in. They're saying that because Lula won. They're claiming credit for Lula winning. This is the U.S. government. This is USAID. Claiming credit. Yay, we defeated Bolsonaro. This is fucking coup stuff. The creation of a task force in partnership with the DA office of Sao Paulo, the biggest city in Brazil, to take proactive measures. So USAID, through the World Justice Project, had a fucking task force partnership with the Brazil head prosecutor who was going around arresting all these Bolsonaro supporters. Diplomatic engagements resulted in, hey, are you a diplomat? World Justice Project? Oh, that's right. Hillary Clinton is on your board. And like James Baker is on your board. The Secretary of State for Bush, the Secretary of State for Obama. You're a fucking CIA State Department cutout. That's why you're funded by USAID. But they themselves call themselves diplomats. Diplomatic engagement. I thought you were an NGO. Oh, you know what it is. We're talking amongst friends here, right? We can just take the mask off. Diplomatic engagements resulted in policy changes by the TSE, that's the Superior Election Court. Now, they talk about weapons here, but what other policy changes were there? Did the diplomatic engagements, as CEPS sought, around getting Brazil to crack down harder on misinformation, was that a policy change resulting from that? If it was, would you tell us? Amidst the growing threats to democracy, they highlighted the coup attempt by the Bolsonaro people as they're orchestrating a coup. Incredible. The project is gearing up for upcoming municipal elections. So it's not just a presidential election in Brazil. USAID is manipulating even the municipal elections, the city level elections in Brazil. They want to make sure their man wins in Sao Paulo. And already anticipating needs and opportunities for the 2026 elections. And remember, Bolsonaro was just banned from the 2026 election. He was banned. It will prioritize building public trust in electronic voting machines. USAID spending your tax dollars, your income tax, were spent on paying USAID to get Brazilians to stop questioning electronic voting machines and coordinating stakeholders. Additionally, plans include publishing a comprehensive analysis of the 2022 experience to inform and establish an inter-American network in defense of democracy in Brazil. World Justice Project announces winners of the World Justice Challenge 2024. Democracy and the rule of law. They were chosen for their demonstrated impact in advancing blob control over judges and prosecutors. In 4 categories: election processes, transitions of government power, overthrowing countries, justice institutions, meaning all the different institutions around the judges and prosecutors, free media, which means making sure our media outlets proliferate, and trustworthy information, meaning not allowing untrustworthy information, meaning censoring anything Trump says, anything Bolsonaro says, anything Marine Le Pen says, anything George Simeon or Kailan Georgescu in Romania says. Do you see how they changed it up? Hey, whatever happened to free speech and freedom of the press? Oh, no. We've changed our free speech category to say, free speech, but the second side of that is make sure you have a censorship capacity. Do you see how nasty that is? And by the way, this is the World Justice Project. USAID's arm to influence courts, judges, and prosecutors. What the flying fuck are they doing giving out awards to groups that have shown a demonstrated impact in getting judges and prosecutors to go after untrustworthy information? You're not allowed to do that in the United States. We have a First Amendment. The government can't ban something for misinformation. This is why they engage third parties to do it, and they pay the third parties to it. But here is the U.S. government giving out awards to who can coerce or pressure or influence judges and prosecutors to arrest people and to make judicial edicts banning social media posts. And number 5, youth engagement. Yeah, get the young people for the rental riots. This is who USAID gave the prize to. This 200 civil society group coalition in Brazil got a cash prize from USAID's rule of law program to map disinformation in Brazil and to protect the fucking CIA's power structures in Brazil. Incredible. Yeah, I saw Skull too. In partnership with Medan. Medan got $5.7 million from the National Science Foundation to do censorship work. They're directly partnered with Medan. That's insane. To access their handbook, you need to give up your personal information. It's not even available to the public. All right. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Godspeed. I will see you on the internet.